You know that saying, happy wife, happy life? Yeah, turns out it's a total joke when your husband finally decides he's done being the only one making sacrifices. I'm Sky, 32, and I'm currently living in my sister's spare bedroom because apparently expecting your husband to put you first is some kind of crime these days. Logan and I met 5 years ago at this industry mixer downtown. He wasn't even my type initially, but he had this quiet confidence and a decent job, so I gave him my number. On our first few dates, he was always asking what I wanted to do, where I wanted to eat, making sure I was having a good time. I remember thinking, now this is how a man should treat a woman. Between us, I'd been with enough losers who couldn't even bother to plan a proper date, so Logan's attentiveness was refreshing. After we got married, I naturally assumed this would continue. I mean, isn't that the whole point? When I told him that happy wife, happy life was my marriage philosophy, he actually laughed and said, "It goes both ways though, right?" No. The saying isn't happy spouse, happy house for a reason. Women deal with enough in life, so the least our husbands can do is prioritize our happiness. The first time I realized Logan might not fully grasp this concept was when he wanted to go on this 3-day fishing trip with his college buddies. We'd been married for maybe 8 months, and he just announces this plan like I'd obviously be fine with it. "You're seriously going to leave me alone for an entire weekend?" I asked him. He got this confused look on his face like he couldn't understand the problem. "We've been together nonstop for months. I thought a little space would be good," he said. That night, I may have gotten emotional until he canceled the trip. What? Sometimes a girl needs to show how much something would hurt her. My sister Paige never understood our dynamic. "Don't you think relationships should be about mutual support?" she'd ask in that judgmental tone of hers. Easy for her to say, still single at 36 because no man can meet her ridiculous standards. Whenever she'd visit, she'd watch how Logan would rush to get me water if I mentioned being thirsty, or how he'd handle all the chores after I'd had a long day at the office. "You know, Sky, he's not your servant," she'd whisper when he left the room. God, she was annoying. Logan's career started taking off about 2 years into our marriage. He got promoted to team lead, and suddenly he was working later hours with more responsibilities. Some women might have been supportive, but I saw it for what it was, time away from me. I'd text him constantly, asking when he'd be home. If he didn't respond within 5 minutes, I'd call. "Just checking you're not having too much fun without me," I'd tell him, only half joking. Those women at his office were always planning happy hours and team landings, and I needed to remind him where his priorities should be. The more successful Logan became, the more I felt entitled to spend money. After all, what was the point of him making more if we couldn't enjoy it? I'd surprise him with the credit card bill, new furniture for the living room 1 month, a complete wardrobe refresh for me the next. When he'd try to discuss budgeting, I'd remind him that appearances matter, especially as he climbed the corporate ladder. "Do you want a wife who looks embarrassing next to your colleagues' wives?" That usually shut him up. Over time, I noticed Logan becoming quieter. He'd come home, ask about my day, listen to all my stories and complaints, but share less and less about his own life. Fine by me, his work stories were boring anyway. What wasn't fine was when he'd occasionally mention boundaries. Like when he wanted to start going to the gym 3 nights a week. "So you can stare at other women?" I asked. "No, for my health," he claimed. I compromised by letting him go once a week and only if he answered my calls immediately afterward. The thing about being married to someone like Logan is that they make it so easy to take more and more. He kept giving, so I kept taking. If I wanted to sleep in on weekends, he'd quietly do all the chores. If I didn't feel like cooking, he'd either cook or order takeout. If I had a bad day, all my responsibilities magically disappeared. It became our normal. I made the demands, and he met them. Around our 3rd anniversary, Paige pulled me aside at our family dinner. "You know your marriage won't last if you keep treating him like this," she said. I laughed it off. "Logan's happy making me happy," I told her. "That's what marriage is." The look she gave me, part pity, part disgust, made me want to dump my wine in her lap. What did she know about marriage? Nothing. Looking back, I guess there were signs that Logan was changing. He started saying no to things. small things at first. He'd say he couldn't pick up my dry cleaning because he had an important meeting. Or he couldn't always answer my texts right away because he was in workshops. Each time, I'd make sure he understood my disappointment. Sometimes with the silent treatment, sometimes with tears, sometimes by bringing up things he'd done wrong in the past. It usually worked, but it was becoming harder to get him back in line. By the 4th year of our marriage, Logan had received another promotion. I threw a surprise party inviting all our friends, making sure everyone knew how supportive I was of his career. In my toast, I even joked about how his success was all thanks to having a wife who ran our household so efficiently. Everyone laughed, but Logan just gave me this strange, empty smile. Whatever. The point is, I played my part perfectly while he just stood there looking ungrateful. That promotion was when the real problem started. Logan had always been into woodworking, making furniture or whatever in our garage every Saturday morning. Honestly, it was annoying. The noise, the mess, and most importantly, him being unavailable to run errands with me. So one weekend, I accidentally sold his expensive tools at our garage sale while he was at a work meeting. They were just collecting dust, I told him when he came home furious. Besides, we need the space for storage. He didn't speak to me for 3 days, which was ridiculous and childish. I mean, they were just tools. Around that time, this woman named Lauren started appearing in his work stories. Lauren presented the quarterly numbers, or Lauren suggested this new approach. I noticed how his voice changed slightly when he mentioned her. More animated, more interested. She sounds like a real kiss-up, I'd say, watching his reaction. Actually, she's just good at her job, he'd reply, suddenly defensive. I immediately checked his phone that night while he was showering. Nothing suspicious in their texts, all work-related. But the fact they texted at all was concerning. Logan started getting weirdly resilient to my usual techniques. When I'd cry about him working late, he'd calmly say, "I understand you're upset, but this project needs to be finished." When I'd bring up past mistakes, he'd say, "We've already discussed that issue, and I thought we resolved it." It was like talking to a robot. Where was the man who would do anything to stop my tears? Who would immediately apologize for upsetting me? This new Logan was infuriating. I started checking his emails, his calendar, his credit card statements. Anything to figure out what had changed. He was taking lunch meetings that weren't on his shared calendar. He had set up some new investment accounts I knew nothing about. When I confronted him, he just said he was streamlining our finances for our future. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Meanwhile, I was maintaining appearances perfectly. When friends came over for dinner, I was the ideal wife, attentive, affectionate, full of praise for Logan's accomplishments. "You guys are relationship goals," our friend Melissa once said, making me beam with pride. The minute they left, though, I'd criticize how Logan had told that story wrong, or how he'd embarrassed me by mentioning I didn't know who some author was. "You make me look stupid in front of our friends," I'd tell him, making sure he knew he'd messed up. Things came to a head at his company's formal dinner. Logan was being recognized for leading some major project, and all the executives were there. During his brief thank you speech, he mentioned several team members, including Lauren. I watched this blonde woman beam as he praised her invaluable contributions. After the speeches, when Lauren approached us, I immediately marked my territory, wrapping my arm through Logan's, interrupting their conversation with inside jokes only we would understand. But then, Logan did something unexpected. He firmly unwrapped my arm and said, "Sky, Lauren was telling me about the client feedback." I felt humiliated, standing there while they continued their boring work talk. So I had a few too many wines and decided to tell a hilarious story about Logan's fear of spiders to the entire executive table. "You should have seen him jump on the bed screaming when he saw that tiny spider in our bathroom," I laughed, expecting everyone to join in. Instead, there was this awkward silence. Logan stared at me with those cold eyes that had been appearing more frequently. "Sky, I think we should head home," he said in this eerily controlled voice. That night, he slept in the guest room for the first time ever. 2 weeks later, I sensed something was seriously wrong. Logan had been extra nice, cooking dinner, asking about my day, even suggesting a weekend getaway. It felt like our early days, which made me suspicious. When the we need to talk moment finally came, I was ready with tears on standby. But the conversation didn't go how these conversations usually went. Logan sat at our dining table with a folder and his laptop, looking irritatingly composed. "Sky, I've accepted a new position at the company's Houston office," he said, sliding over an official letter. I stared at him, waiting for the "just kidding" part. It never came. "You're not serious," I said. "We can't move to Houston. My friends are here. My job is here." He looked at me with those detached eyes and said, "I'm not asking you to move to Houston. I'm telling you, I'm moving to Houston." The shock must have shown on my face because he actually smiled a little. Not a warm smile, more like satisfaction. "I've been planning this for 14 months, he continued, opening his laptop. "I've documented every instance of emotional manipulation. Every time you've checked my phone, every financial decision you've made without consulting me, every friend and hobby you've forced me to abandon." He turned the screen to show me a detailed spreadsheet with dates, descriptions, and even witness names. "This whole time you've been building a case against me?" I was genuinely stunned. This wasn't the Logan I married, the one who would do anything to make me happy. This was someone calculating and cold. "Not a case," he corrected me. "A reality check, for both of us." He then pulled out financial statements showing he'd been systematically separating our finances for months. Joint accounts I thought had thousands had been legally reduced to just my direct deposits. Investment accounts I didn't even know existed were in his name only. When I started crying, real tears this time, not the strategic kind, he didn't react at all. "I've also been in therapy," he added, pulling out another piece of paper. "My therapist helped me recognize the signs of emotional abuse in our relationship." Emotional abuse? Was he kidding me? "If anyone's been abused in this relationship, it's me," I shouted. "I've given you everything, supported your career, been the perfect wife while you've been plotting this. Betrayal." Logan just stared at me with this fake, patronizing concern. "This is exactly the response Dr. Winters predicted," he said, checking something off on his papers like I was some kind of science experiment. That's when the doorbell rang. I thought it might be a delivery, but no, it was my sister Paige standing there with an overnight bag. They'd been talking for months, apparently. My own sister had betrayed me, too. "And you knew about Houston, about all of this?" I asked her. She nodded, not even having the decency to look guilty. "Several of your friends know, too," she added. "People have been concerned for a while." I tried every approach I could think of. I reminded Logan of our wedding vows. I brought up all the sacrifices I'd made for him. I even tried seduction, which had always worked before. Nothing. He just kept referring to his stupid notes and therapy insights. "My flight leaves tomorrow morning," he said finally. "The house is being listed for sale next week. Your name is on the deed, so you'll receive half the proceeds after the mortgage is paid." I switched tactics, threatening to tell everyone what a monster he was for abandoning his wife without warning. That's when he played his final card, a recording of me screaming at him after he'd forgotten to pick up my dry cleaning, calling him useless and threatening to make his life hell if he ever disappointed me again. "I have dozens of these," he said quietly. Logan packed 2 suitcases while I watched in shock, then casually informed me he'd be staying at a hotel until his flight. Just like that, 5 years of marriage ended with a spreadsheet and an overnight bag. The next few weeks were absolute hell. I moved in with Paige temporarily while figuring out my next steps. Her spare bedroom was half the size of my walk-in closet at home, and she had all these ridiculous house rules like clean up after yourself and contribute to groceries. As if I wasn't already dealing with enough trauma. My first instinct was to control the narrative. I spent an entire day crafting the perfect Facebook post about how sometimes people grow apart and how I was giving Logan space to find himself. I expected an outpouring of sympathy and support. Instead, the post got maybe 15 likes and 3 generic comments. Even worse, my friend Melissa messaged me privately. "We all know what really happened, Sky. Maybe take some time to reflect before posting." When I tried reaching out to our other friends, I got similarly cold responses. "Logan told us his side already," or "We've been worried about your behavior for a while." These were people who had smiled at my dinner parties and laughed at my jokes for years. I tried explaining that Logan had manipulated them with his twisted version of events, but no one seemed interested in my truth. The financial reality hit next. I'd always handled our day-to-day spending, but had left the boring stuff like investments and savings to Logan. Big mistake. Most of our money was either in his name or had been legally moved before he left. The accounts I thought were flush with cash had just enough for a few months of expenses. Dating was supposed to be my escape, my chance to show Logan he was replaceable. The matches came easily enough, but the actual dates were disasters. One guy told me I came across as intense when I asked about his 5-year plan on the first date. Another seemed put off when I explained my situation with Logan and mentioned that I was just looking for someone to help me make him jealous on social media. Meanwhile, Paige was becoming increasingly unbearable to live with. "Did you leave wet towels on my bathroom floor again?" Or, "That's your third glass of wine tonight, Sky." She acted like she was doing me this massive favor by letting me stay with her, constantly reminding me that it was temporary until you get your act together. The worst blow came when our mutual friend Taylor accidentally let slip that Logan was doing really well in Houston. I pretended not to care, but immediately pressed for details. That night, I created a fake Instagram account to check on him. His profile was annoyingly positive, pictures of furniture he'd made, his new office view, Houston sunsets. No sign of missing me at all. I convinced myself I didn't care about Logan's new life, but I couldn't stop checking his social media. That's how I discovered he'd been in regular contact with Lauren since before the move. Their messages were frustratingly appropriate, mostly work stuff with occasional personal updates, but the friendly tone made me sick. "Looking forward to showing you the city when you visit next month," he wrote to her. She was visiting him? In Houston? Things with Paige reached breaking point when she found me drunk at 3 a.m., scrolling through Logan's emails on my laptop. "This has to stop, Sky," she said, closing my computer. "You're stalking your ex-husband. Do you realize how unhealthy that is?" The next morning, I found apartment listings printed out on the kitchen counter. Message received. That's when I decided enough was enough. If Logan thought he could just discard me and start a shiny new life with Lauren, he had another thing coming. I spent 3 days planning my trip to Houston, using the last of my savings for a flight and hotel. I researched his company online and discovered they were hosting a client appreciation event. The perfect opportunity to confront him. When Paige discovered my plans, she completely overreacted. "You're going to ambush him at a work event? Do you hear yourself?" She threatened to call Logan and warn him, which forced me to lie about canceling the trip. The event started at 7 p.m., but I arrived at 8, wanting to make an entrance when things would be in full swing. I spotted Logan immediately. He was standing near the stage, looking annoyingly good in a suit I'd never seen before. And there, right beside him with her hand casually touching his arm, was Lauren. I grabbed a champagne flute and made my way toward them. Logan saw me when I was about 10 feet away, and the smile disappeared from his face. He whispered something to Lauren, whose eyes widened. Before they could escape, I was there, standing right in front of them, with what I hoped was a devastatingly casual smile. "Surprise," I said, raising my glass in a mock toast. "I thought I'd see this famous Houston office for myself." Logan's face had gone completely neutral. "Sky, this isn't appropriate," he said quietly. "This is a work event." Lauren looked uncomfortable but didn't leave, which infuriated me more. Logan stepped slightly in front of her, like he was protecting her from me. "We should talk outside," he said, taking my elbow to guide me away. I jerked my arm free, sloshing champagne onto the carpet. "Don't touch me," I said, loud enough for nearby people to turn and stare. "You lost that right when you abandoned me." "Is everything okay here?" A concerned-looking woman approached us. "Everything's fine, Diane," Logan said with forced calmness. "My ex-wife just stopped by unexpectedly." "Ex-wife? We weren't even officially divorced yet." "Oh, is this the unstable one you mentioned?" the woman asked in what she probably thought was a whisper. The room seemed to tilt around me. He'd been telling people I was unstable? Something snapped. I turned to the growing crowd of onlookers and raised my voice. Let me tell you all about Logan Cooper, the man who married me, promised to love me forever, then spent a year secretly planning to leave me with nothing. I didn't get to finish because Logan firmly took my arm again, and this time successfully steered me toward a side door. People were openly staring now, some even taking out their phones. Perfect evidence of his aggressive behavior. But when we reached the hallway, I realized someone was filming me, not him. A security guard appeared, asking if there was a problem. "This woman is trespassing and causing a disturbance," Lauren said. She was not invited to this private event. I turned on her, all pretense of civility gone. "You think you know him? You think you're special? He'll do the same thing to you once he gets bored." Logan held up his phone, showing me he was recording. "This needs to stop, Sky," he said with maddening composure. "Security is escorting you out, and if you continue this behavior, I'll be forced to take legal action." "You ruined my life," I hissed, tears streaming down my face. "I gave you everything, and you threw me away like garbage." For a brief moment, I thought I saw genuine sadness in his eyes. "No, Sky," he said softly. "You gave me ultimatums, not love." When I turned on my phone after landing, it exploded with notifications. The videos had gone viral: Psycho X crashes corporate event, and similar charming titles. My face was clearly visible, my words audible. I had dozens of missed calls from Paige and messages from the few friends who still spoke to me. I took a rideshare back to Paige's, but when I arrived, I found my suitcases and boxes stacked neatly by her front door. The locks had been changed. A note was taped to my makeup case. I saw the videos. "This is beyond what I can help you with. I've paid for a week at the extended stay motel down the street. Please get professional help. Paige." I spent 2 days at the motel, alternating between rage scrolling through social media reactions to the videos and sleeping to escape my new reality. On the third day, I got an email that temporarily stopped my heart. Subject line: termination of employment. My company had seen the videos too. That same afternoon, a courier delivered an envelope containing a restraining order. Logan had filed for an emergency order prohibiting me from contacting him, Lauren, or anyone at his company. The filing included screenshots of the dozens of texts I'd sent him after the Houston incident. The restraining order became permanent. I wasn't even allowed to mention Logan on social media. My week at the motel was almost up, and I had no income. I applied for every job I could find, but the viral videos made it difficult. I finally found work at a call center, the kind of mindless customer service job I'd mocked people for having back when I had choices. 6 months after Logan left, I overheard a conversation about his engagement to Lauren. There it was on Instagram. Logan and Lauren on a beach, her left hand prominently displaying a ring. The caption read, "She said yes. Excited to start this new chapter with someone who understands that love means mutual support and respect." 2 weeks later, I discovered they were having a child together. The family I had always put off because I wasn't ready, because my career needed to stabilize first, because our house wasn't big enough yet. 1 year after Logan walked out, my life bears no resemblance to what it once was. I live in a dingy one-bedroom apartment that costs almost my entire paycheck. My social circle consists of coworkers who know nothing about my past. I haven't spoken to Paige in months. Last week, I saw Logan and Lauren in person for the first time since Houston. I was picking up groceries when I spotted them in the baby aisle. Lauren was visibly pregnant. They were comparing baby products, laughing about something on the packaging. They looked content. Not the passionate, dramatic happiness I'd always chased, but something steadier, more durable. That night, I found their baby registry online. They're having a girl. I thought about sending something anonymously, maybe the most expensive item on the list, just to show I'm doing fine too. But what would that prove? And the crazy part? I still don't think any of this is my fault. I was a good wife. I just expected the same commitment from him that I was willing to give. If Logan were to somehow hear this story, he'd probably say it proves his point, that I'm still not taking responsibility, still blaming everyone else. But you know what? Happy wife, happy life. That's what they say, right? I just married a man who didn't understand the assignment. A man who decided his happiness mattered more than mine. So let him have his perfect new wife, and his perfect new baby, and his perfect new life. I'm fine right here, starting over. And the next time I find someone, you better believe I'll make sure he understands exactly what happy wife, happy life really means. And this time, I'll get it in writing.